Welcome to Conversations from the Edge of Consciousness. I'm your host, Kristine Madeira. For me, and possibly for you, the inner world of consciousness has always been much more real and way more fun than the so-called real material world. Growing up, I thought I was alone in this, but I'm not. There are a lot of us, and far too many have no one to talk to who shares this experience. I've been lucky to cultivate a community of friends who love to talk about the energies, ideas, and vibrations that are pushing the edges of our own consciousness, as well as our collective consciousness. In Conversations from the Edge, we share our conversations with you. Today's conversation is with Katie Kieffer, and this is our second conversation with Katie. And then our last conversation, which full disclosure was about 10 minutes ago, because mostly when we have a conversation, it's like 3 hours long. So, we couldn't put people through that. But as soon as our conversation ended and we were talking about false virtues and false definitions and true virtues and true definitions and how they work in the energy system, I brought up something that was up for me. And so we were like, well, let's do another one because we really want to talk about that. So welcome back, Katie, and just give us like the quick thumbnail version of who you are and what you do.
Thank you. So I'm Katie Kieffer. I'm a Theta Healing practitioner. By that would be my credentials. But other than that, it's basically I help people move through the inner work and the inner work of aligning within themselves, integrating into wholeness. And I'm really good at seeing like all of these different pieces and how they connect and how to get into those underlying beliefs or things that kind of got maybe just twisted throughout time and kind of straighten them out so that you can be in alignment with yourself, you can be in alignment with Creator, you can be in alignment with your purpose and really come into a sense of congruence and feeling like you're in the light rather than being in the shadows.
Perfect. All right. So what we had, kind of a preface to what we're going to jump into today, was we'd had a discussion before, kind of off air, about the difference between thought and awareness. Mm-hmm. And the reason we had talked about that originally was because about, doesn't matter how long ago it is at this point, but I fell and I hit my head and I had a pretty significant concussion, and it was my 6th concussion. And as I was laying there on the ground, feeling my brain swell or whatever was happening, my awareness was life is going to change. And it wasn't an awareness, it wasn't a fear awareness. It was really, the awareness was that this was happening for a purpose. For me, and that my life was going to be rearranged, and I was totally on board with that. I thought, as much as I could be, I didn't really have a choice. So I was on board with that. And so from this place of awareness, I was really like, well, okay, so we're going to move forward. We're going to do this a little bit differently. During a few of the months after this concussion, I could not think. Like there was so for me, the difference between the thought and awareness was like electrical information or energy running through my brain. Like the synapses were firing, the thought process, the intentional thought process where, you're thinking about something, like what are we going to make for dinner and all of that I couldn't do it. It hurt my head. But when I was in awareness, which was a different state, it was kind of, it's the observer, but it was like behind the observer where it's a state that was really feeding my brain versus one that was making my brain work. Like there was this different place of awareness. So we got this conversation about what the difference between thought and awareness was. And I was doing it from an experiential level, but Katie had a different idea, from her perspective, what this is. So why don't you talk about like what the difference is between thought and awareness?
Okay. And I don't remember what I said then because normally when we get into these conversations, we're done. If I haven't taken notes, there's a lot I just don't remember.
Oh, me too.
And so
what's fresh and new for you about that now?
Really, I like how you describe that, is that thought is the work of the brain.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, after having these conversations with you when you had the concussion, it got me really like, okay, what is this about? And there would be times, and it really explains it well, because there's so much thought that goes on in like the prefrontal cortex in the
Mm-hmm.
front of our brain. And moving, if it hurts, if you get those headaches a lot or you're thinking a lot and it hurts, you are working your physicality way too much.
Mm-hmm.
And I really do believe that thought and awareness can go hand in hand, but I don't think that we're taught that very often.
No,
And
and they
so
have different functions.
very different functions. The thought processes really, in my perspective, have to do with our daily life here. It's living here on the earth. Whereas awareness can help us to step back and then allow the awareness piece to go, okay, these are thoughts that will help us move forward, that can move things into action. And so to me, the awareness is more of, it's like this intangible thing. And there's something about, and maybe it's simply a restriction of language at the moment, but there's the awareness, and that expanded awareness of just recognizing and realizing all of these different things moving and flowing, versus a thought process that has you moving in a linear fashion and
Well,
only linear.
and you know, and you touched on this, but I wanted to point it out a little bit more, that for me in my experience, um, awareness was absolutely present moment. Like
Yes.
you were only aware in the present moment. Now things could happen. I could be aware and still have a certain amount of forward flow, I guess, in awareness. Like I could be aware that dinner time was coming, and kind of have something float through my awareness about what was easy to throw into the new wave to cook without going into thought. So for me, when I went into thought, it was more about um, past and future. And
Yeah.
the other piece about this that I thought was really significant at the time, and I still do, and I can think now more, which is kind of not particularly helpful, but it is what it is. My brain's working better. Is that awareness was really like the point of being self-referencing. So most of the time when we think of self-referencing, we're referencing our own conditioning. We're referencing what we've been taught, who we've
Hmm.
learned to be, how we've learned to think, our whole family history. You know what we were asked to process in a therapist's office, where we're asked to go back and consider all of the structures and thoughts and beliefs that make up our life, and we reference those as our identity. In awareness, the point of self-referencing was not any of those kinds of ideas. The referencing was simply being. That it was the present moment reference of simply being alive and simply being in awareness and simply being conscious. There was no story there. And like, so that was a huge difference for me in remembering this, because I've had lots of flashes and spaces of this before, but where there was a long period of time where I could not go into story because my brain would not work that way. And so I learned at that point to really begin to self-reference from that place of being versus story. And so for me, that's a big piece of the difference too. Like thought is about telling the stories, whether it's a story that we're in the moment or the story about what we're making for dinner. We kind of fit it into the narrative of our life. And we can have really intentional thoughts, like if you're balancing your checkbook, if you're creating something, if you're writing copy for your business, you can have really intentional things, that I think is a really good use of thought. Or we can have these random self-referencing thoughts, that go back to always comparing what's happening now to our conditioning to be sure we're okay or not okay, or if this person's acting the way they're supposed to be or they're not, or all of these points of comparison when we're referencing back into the stories that we've learned about ourselves.
That's a really beautiful way to put it.
Thank you.
That is really, really beautiful. And yeah, I mean, we've had so much conditioning, and especially
Hmm.
for older souls, our conditioning isn't just from this lifetime. Our conditioning is from anywhere and everywhere we've been. And so we have the ancestral conditioning. We have our soul that's our, the soul carries with it all the experiences it's had. And
Hmm.
sometimes those will pass on through lifetime after lifetime unresolved. And so being able to be in that being space of larger awareness can actually really help discern
Hmm.
what's story, what's real, what's true. Um, and that's also where a lot of insight can drop in.
Yes, and that was a huge thing because when you're in the story piece, when you're referencing the story, and it's not just our own personal story. I mean, we're sort of living out the stories around us, the story of our
Hmm.
family, the story of our country, the story of our our current events, and the stories of the past that inform the present and all of humanity. And I mean, you can go on and on and on. But so we're not always just living out those sorts of stories. And I kind of lost my train of thought there because I do that. So
That's okay.
anyway, and with my hidden Sarita, it's even more so. So it was this great experience. But that point of awareness was a place where more awareness would drop in. Like I couldn't process things in any kind of thought oriented way. Like I couldn't gnaw on them with language through my brain, which I love to do. I'm the first
Hmm.
person to admit that. And I couldn't do it, which is quite vexing. But I could sit in awareness and allow, and things would just drop in and kind of filter through my energy system and filter through my energy system, and things would begin to shift and change, not because I was intending to make those changes, but simply because my brain didn't work in a way that like got in the way of that. And I've been doing this kind of work for a couple of decades anyway, so it's familiar work, and it does not feel threatening to have these changes just happen. I allow that to happen. It was not always the case. So that was a really pivotal experience to be able to be in that state of awareness and allow life to shift and change, even though I wasn't really in a place or a way that I could intentionally affect it.
Yeah, I understand that. Um,
So this is all kind of a preface for this next little piece that we were really wanting to talk about, though, and that was this idea. Now that we know the difference between thought and awareness, hopefully, and oh, and if you meditate, if you're in that state, for people who've never done this before, who've always been really in thought, that state where you're sort of watching yourself not from a place of thinking, but being able to be in that place of awe, that place of just simply being, without in the present moment, without having to be thinking about something, without comparing it to something, without trying to make it different, but simply being in that place of peace. Like that's kind of that experience of awareness, the little flavor of it.
mhm.
And that's not unusual for me. Like I've spent years meditating, so I'm comfortable with awareness, but I have been moving toward this larger state of awareness and dismantling some of the things inside of me that were like just holding on to a fixed, limited kind of awareness. So for me, what it was is I could tell in my eyes and my vision system, like it was like a animal holding on to a screen, looking out and saying, I'm going to hold on, I'm going to be the looker, and I'm going to be the processor of information visually. And so I've been trying to move out of that because, again, when I had the concussion, I couldn't actually see intentionally either. I couldn't actually open my eyes for a long time. So I got a lot of insight into my vision system, and that I was really trying to hold on to like a false awareness there. and play with this awareness in my brain as a false awareness, which was really, to me, kind of this place of quiet but holding on vigilance. So it was like the small me not wanting to let go of um, of the identity of being the awareness, of being the observer, and allow myself to open up to a larger experience of awareness and what that could be. Because it felt like, and I've always had this issue, that if I let go of that part of me, and there's been a lot of other parts in the process, but this particular one is up now. If I let go of this part of me, I let go of myself. Then I cease to exist. And somehow, which I know just doesn't make any sense rationally, but it's an energetic, emotional quality. So that's what we were talking about before. And Katie brought up a really good point. So what's your point on that? And let's just dive into it from there.
Okay. So yeah, how I see that is we have so many different facets of self. We have the ego, which a lot of people are trying to obliterate their ego. Please don't.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. I mean, yeah, you want to modify and shift, yes, but not obliterate the ego. Then we've got our soul perspective. We have our high self. We have our inner children. We have all of these different aspects of self, and there's some I think we don't even really quite have language for yet.
Yeah.
So being in that, the idea of the small self, being afraid to let go of, it's a fear of abandonment of the rest of yourself. And so really it's just a matter of that bringing the different aspects of self basically to the same page, to the same understandings of, oh, so for instance, you would want the small self or the ego to go, oh, I'm on board with that. I can do that. And we can still function here in our human world from that space. And I can learn how to translate that into our world here. And so, go ahead.
I was going to say the ego's function is really to be able to live in space and time.
Exactly.
It's to be able to have experience, because everything is really the universal now. And so if everything's happening at once, that's a lot. So the ego is what helps us live in space and time. But we've sort of laden it with all of this conditioning that we have, which is part of the function of space and time. But we've made it wrong somehow instead of something that we just simply need to move into a different understanding.
Right.
And I've had a particularly difficult time letting go of particular aspects of identity and what that means, and allowing that process to flow forward. So this was just another layer of that. I've worked through lots of layers. Katie's worked with me on lots of layers, but I hit another one. And in one way it shows up for me as well, and it may show up for other people this way, is that when I go to bed at night, I might be perfectly tired. But there's that wakefulness that's behind everything. That was really, it's like that, it's that layer before that letting go of letting go into sleep to allow total consciousness to kind of reside. That was like, nope, I'm here as long as I can stand it. And sometimes it's a long time.
Right.
And I'm not thinking about anything. There's no thoughts going on in my head. It's just this part of me that's like, I'm here, I'm staking my claim, I'm staying here until somehow, sleep comes. So that was another way that it shows up for me. But Katie is really excellent at interpreting and following these things. So let's just play with this.
Yeah. So the difference between true awareness and false awareness, it feels like false awareness is more in thought rather than like the higher, broader aspects of self. So it feels like a false awareness would actually be where the chasm is evident. between, you're like, oh, it's like you can see a gap between what is actually happening in your experience and
Mm-hmm.
what you know is possible or where you want to be. And so that would, to me, would be a false awareness in some way. And it's like, yes, but that's not quite right. But whereas true awareness, actually, even the true awareness will see the chasm and go, okay, it's there. It's not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a false awareness, it's okay, so here's the visual that I'm getting. So the visual is the idea of you're standing at the cliff and you can see over there and there's a fear involved, a discomfort of some sort. And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my God, how am I going to get over there?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you look at it from the other side,
Yeah.
maybe at a little higher elevation, you go, oh, no big deal. I can just leap over. And
Yeah.
there's no fear, it's just, oh, it is. Oh, there it is. There's the solution. And it just kind of drops in and materializes. It just happens. And so that, yeah, that's the best, really the best I've got at the moment.
Okay. Well, and Katie's very visual, and I'm not. Like, I can sit and look at this darkness behind my eyes forever, and nothing ever happens. So, but I experience things in terms of words. Like, words for me have flavors and resonance, and they carry a lot of. They carry for me what visualization carries for other people. And the word that comes to me that's the difference between the two, or one of the differences between the two, is spaciousness. Like, the one, that part of me that's holding on tight is very tight, and it's holding on, it's like hunkered down, and it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm here for the long haul. But and it's not thought in the term, in the sense that I'm thinking anything. It's thought in it's this stuckness. It's like this
Mm-hmm.
this solid stuckness, and it's a quiet stuckness, but it's kind of like, an animal that's hiding. There's nothing's going on in the head, but it's like this. It's like sort of like laying in wait. And then like what you call on the other side of the chasm is the spaciousness. You're exactly right, that
Mm-hmm.
you're able to be aware of that piece, and you've got all of this other awareness. And so for me, that's exactly kind of the place that it's been. It's the dynamic between these two, and then not quite being able to let go somehow of this hunkered down, quiet, false awareness, to step into and trust this larger experience of awareness, kind of like the higher self-awareness, the soul awareness, that place of kind of the being, the larger part of us that I really want to rest more deeply in.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And so, as you talk about that, what comes to mind was, a few weeks ago, I was really having this issue of like, what is going on here? And it was that my body did not recognize my soul's vibration,
Mm.
because the body is the densest of our being. And so it can take a little more time for the body to adjust. Well, if we're evolving on the soul and the non-physical parts of ourselves so quickly, that can actually throw the ego and the body into a panic
Mm-hmm.
of going, oh my God, what's happening? Because
Yeah.
they don't recognize you anymore. And it's like, well, no, we're all still one. And it's just, it can cause a problem. And
Mm-hmm.
so what I've found helpful is to actually download the body and have Creator teach the body what this new piece of soul, that this new vibration of the soul is. So that even though it may still take a little more time for the body and the brain and the ego to um, catch up with that vibration, it's not
Mm-hmm.
foreign. The body still knows what's going on and can relax into that and into the evolution. And in my opinion and experience, what's happened is that actually takes us out of the resistance. So instead of being this animal that's kind of caged, because really if you look at the third plane beings, we're in part of the animal kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what happens, is the non-physical part of us has this great awareness and makes this huge energetic shift. And then the body is going, oh crap, what is that? It goes into reaction and resistance. And even if that, for me, I don't get a whole lot of things showing up in the way of physical discomfort or ailments.
Yeah, me either.
Sometimes I'll get some, like my back will have this discomfort, but it moves so much. I'm like, okay, that's not like, I don't need to see a chiropractor.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so I know that, the treating it as a physical issue is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's not going to help me. But that's just
Mm-hmm.
me. When I am in question, I do go and get checked out.
Yeah.
But I've learned enough that I'm like, no, this is energy. And it's the body being in resistance. I
Yeah,
tend to
sometimes I
experience
think
it more
that's
in the ego. I experience it more in the mental and emotional realms.
yeah, me too. But I do, sometimes, and my chiropractor used to tell me this, and she's very into energy as well. I'm sure she's going to be on here in a conversation at some point. But that oftentimes that, the body, when it's in resistance, but you can't just pull everything out of resistance at one time. Like
Mm-mm.
there's a process, and it's a physical being. Things happen in a process, and that process can take some time. So even the process of healing, there's a cascading effect, and
Right.
it's not, and we talk about this instant healing. Well, I mean, from a body's perspective, it's not instant, but you can trust the flow of that healing. But anyway, we're kind of getting off the topic of that.
Right. Well,
um
but that's what happens when you have this great awareness in the
mhm.
non-physical,
Yeah.
and it's really a big vibrational jump from where the physical part is. It causes just some disruption. And so what I've been doing is, when I notice that disruption and that gap, that vibrational gap, what I've been doing is asking creator to teach the body what's happening, and to teach the body what this higher vibration is, and it kind of smooths things out.
Well, let's do that. I mean, I'm already, I suck energy up like a sponge, and just as you were talking, I could feel things shifting and changing. But
Yeah.
I love the whole work. I think it's great. So let's do that, in case this has kind of stirred something up for anybody else who might be listening.
Okay. So yeah, and anybody else who's listening, don't do this when you're driving.
Yeah.
Be somewhere safe and comfortable, if you want to, because this is powerful work, and it will take you into a theta brainwave.
hmm
Um,
And that
and
is
I do
not
this
your
so
driving
much.
brainwave.
No, 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 no.
That's
No,
your falling
you,
asleep brainwave.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, be comfortable. And so what we're going to do is, we'll get the body and soul and high self and any other aspects that are maybe a little out of alignment, or questioning, or having a little trouble with the soul's evolution, and vibrational raising. We'll kind of get everybody on the same page, and
Yeah.
it should smooth things out.
Perfect.
So are you ready to go into meditation?
Oh, can we do, before we do that, the difference between false awareness and true awareness?
Yes.
All right,
Yeah,
that's
we'll
part of
download
it.
that first, and then we
Okay.
will, yeah, and so it'll, one will flow right into the other. It won't be two
Yeah.
separate things. It'll be
Perfect.
one long thing.
Perfect.
Okay. So I'm going to start in the heart space. Breathe in and out of the heart space. And connecting your energy into the earth, following the silver cord to the center of the earth, and then drawing up the earth energy through your body and bringing it out the top of your head into a bubble. And imagining you're in that bubble, and lift it up out of the earth's atmosphere, going up through layers and layers of light like an elevator. Going up, you'll go through a golden light. You'll go up through a thicker substance, and then you'll come out into a bright white iridescent light. let yourself come all the way into the iridescence and let that iridescence fill you. And so first we're going to ask the Creator instill into you Creator's highest understanding, truth, wisdom, and perspective of the difference between true awareness and false awareness, and make yours the same. And we are going to ask the Creator clear away the false awarenesses as are ready to leave now. And to do this in a way that's really gentle and loving and kind for all aspects of self. We're going to ask that Creator bring you into true awareness more and more every day as you move forward. And that you recognize what true awareness is. You know how to have true awareness and how to use true awareness in your day-to-day life. So if you want to receive that, just allow that to flow in. You can say yes. There we go. Just asking now to see if there's something else that needs to go with this before we move into the alignment. Okay, and so also bringing in Creator's highest truth, perspective, and understanding of the difference between thought and awareness. And that you know when to use thought and how to use thought in a way that is supportive and kind and loving for yourself and for others. So if you would like this, allow it to come in and say yes. And also I'm hearing to have Creator show you what it feels like to be in true awareness, and also what it feels like to be in true thought. And that you can have both at the same time. You know how and when to use what and when to use them together. That it's safe and possible, that your body is safe, that your ego is safe, that the physical realm of your being is safe, in allowing the flow of true awareness from the non-physical. So if you would like this, say yes. Allow yourself to receive it. And I'm hearing also to bring in Creator's highest truth, perspective, understanding, and wisdom of the difference between true thought and false thought, and make yours the same. That you know how to use true thought, and that you know how to allow false thought to fall away. If you'd like that, say yes. Okay, now that part's feeling complete. Does that feel complete for you, Kristine?
Yes. You know, I always put in support along with safety for me.
Okay.
So I just add that myself, but I just put that out there in case that was something important for somebody else.
So yeah, I'm feeling the energy kind of rewind and bringing in support for all of those. So if for those listening, if you would like to add support, just allow yourself to receive it. The energy is already here. So now we're going to move on to teaching the body what the soul's vibration is. So from this iridescent space, we ask that the Creator teach your body your soul's vibration as it is now, and that your body knows how to align with and match the vibration of the soul in its physical form. That your body knows how to allow the soul's energy to flow through the body and fill the body and be expressed here on the physical plane. And we ask that Creator also teach the ego that the ego is safe, that the ego is important and it is safe in being in harmony and congruent with the soul and the high self and the non-physical aspects of self.
And supportive.
And very supportive. That, ooh, there we go. Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that the ego knows what it feels like to be supported by the soul, and that it knows how to support the soul, and that it's all in alignment. That the vibrations between the soul, the high self, the ego, the body, and any and all other aspects of self recognize one another, work in harmony and balance with one another, and that this continues as you move forward. That as the different parts of you shift and grow and evolve and change in vibration, that all of these aspects recognize what's happening and feel supported and feel safe in making these changes. So if you would like that, allow Creator to bring that in for you and say yes. How's that feeling?
Oh, it's feeling lovely. Thank you so much. I did want to, I always interrupt you and put support in there, and you know
That's
that.
okay. Well,
But I wanted to say that, for anybody listening, that, oftentimes we do, and I know I did for years, focused on safety. And I woke up one day and I realized I feel safe. Like, it took a long time to get a sense of feeling safe in the world, of having a general sense of safety. But I could feel safe, but I had not, I still didn't feel supported. And so like now I'm working on having a general feeling and sense of feeling supported in the world. And so it's a very different energy for me. So I know I always interrupt with support. Katie, poor thing, in our conversation.
No, that's fine.
Support.
That's okay. And so that's really, and I think I've worked on support so much that, and really even in session, it's absolutely appropriate. If the words are not coming out and it's something that you want to add, absolutely say it. That's important, because even if I'm not picking that up because I am just watching the energy and I'm like, this is where it is. Okay, Creator, what do they need? Where are we going with this? Usually at some point I'll ask, is there something else that you want, something else that's coming up? But even in the middle of downloads, to say, oh, this is a word that's coming up, that's absolutely fine and it's appropriate. And it works really well. And so since support is such a big issue, and really, especially for those of us who are not originally from Earth, the idea of being supported here is kind of weird. It's like we know what we need to do, but it's like we don't know how to access it. And so let's do a download on that one as well. Let's have Creator bring in and instill into you the feeling of what it feels like to be and feel supported in your physical life here on Earth. That you know what support looks like here on Earth from Creator's perspective, and that yours is the same. And bring that in a way that is gentle and loving and kind for you, and that you recognize it when you have it. How's that feeling?
That feels really good. I want to add something to this too. We've talked about this in the past, is that, support because this has, of course, been an ongoing theme for me. We often think of support as something that comes from the outside and supporting
Mm-hmm.
us. And when we think of the term self-supporting, we think of it in terms of financial support.
Right.
However, to be self-supporting is when is when you have your own back, is when you meet your own needs, as when you hold your own boundaries, as all those things that you do to love and support yourself, and that we're not very good at learning how to do. At least most of us aren't very good at that. And so maybe we can extend this download and do another quick one as well on what it means to be self-supporting, and not just self-supporting in a financial way, but to support all elements
Yeah.
of yourself.
Yeah, that's really, really beautiful. And so, as you're talking about this, I feel like this pillar that comes up like right in the center of my body.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a dynamic system that happens with that. And so let's have Creator bring in for you Creator's highest truth, perspective, understanding, and wisdom, and the feeling of what it feels like to be fully self-supported in all aspects and in all ways from within yourself. And make yours the same. Make your truth, perspective, understanding, wisdom, and feeling the same. That you recognize that you have the capacity to support yourself from within, and what that means from Creator's perspective, and make yours the same. And show you that you can have this self-supporting system within you and still be supported by other people as well. And that you can also help support other people. And that there's this dynamic flow that happens, but it's sourced from within and it goes out and flows back. There's a reciprocity here.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's have Creator bring in the highest truth of that and make yours the same. And have Creator instill into you Creator's definition, perspective, and understanding of what reciprocity is, and make yours the same. And show you that support can, and it is appropriate for it to begin within, and then it flows out, and there's reciprocity.
Can I add something to that?
Absolutely.
So again, as I'm feeling into the self-supporting, I just want to make sure it's known, and be sure that we have this as part of the energy, that self doesn't just mean your physical body and self. Self is you and your higher self and your soul self, and the interaction between all of that. So self-supporting is also, in my view, and in what I'm trying to cultivate with this, is not just me as my human self, working really hard to support myself, because I've done that my whole life to not as great an effect as I would like, but also to be able to be in that interaction and connection with the higher self, with the soul self, with the larger self, the whole self, and be self-supporting in that level too, to be able to receive that support, allow that support, and not block it by thinking that we need to do everything our little self way.
Right. Okay, so what I feel in that is to have Creator show you and instill into you the feeling of what it feels like for all the different aspects of self to be supportive of the other aspects of self. So that you know what it feels like for your ego to support your soul, for your soul to support your ego, for your high self to support the soul and the ego, and for those aspects to support the high self. And likewise, through every aspect of self.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm feeling inner children. There's some inner children who are going to be showing up. So if that's happening for you, that's okay. So let's have Creator instill into you the feeling of what it feels like to know that your inner children are and can be supported by you, by your soul, by your adult self, by your high self, by all those aspects of yourself. that your inner children can get what they need and the support that they need and want and that attention that they crave in ways that are healthy, loving, supportive, and that will bring them into wholeness with the rest of you. And so if you would like this, please just let the energy flow through you. You can say yes and allow yourself to fully receive that and let that energy flow through and feel it in your body. There we go. Okay, now it's beginning to feel complete.
Well, let me just add one more thing in here, because we think of self-supporting historically as like being financially self-supporting. So we don't want it to be centered around that, but we don't want to leave that
Right.
out either. So let's bring in money as the
Yes.
appropriate support of finances and money and all that stuff
Yes.
as well.
So let's have Creator do that. Let's have Creator instill into you Creator's highest truth, perspective, understanding, wisdom, and the feeling of what it feels like for money to support you. And for you, from the soul level and from the non-physical, to know how to support the flow of money back to you so that there's reciprocity happening, that you are worthy and deserving of support in all ways, including financial support, and that you know how to receive this and that you know how to facilitate it in ways that are loving and kind to yourself and to others, in a way that's really harmonious and balanced from all aspects of self and with others in the world as well, that there's a harmony and balance and I'm feeling a free flow, just this free flow of support with money and with finances and in ways that are really fulfilling for you and really kind and loving for others as well as for yourself. So there's this reciprocity. I keep coming back to reciprocity. And as I'm sitting here, I'm like doing lots of figure eights with my hands, and it's this reciprocity that happens with support. It goes out from you without depleting you and comes back into you without depleting others. And the same happens with money. It comes in through you and it goes out through you without depleting anything. And it's just this beautiful flow. And so let's have Creator instill into you what it feels like to have this flow in your life and teach your body what this flow feels like and open up those receptors, physical and non-physical, for this flow to be part of your life, and that you know who you are and how to live your life with this flow, and this flow that happens within your body, the flow that happens within all the aspects of self, coming together in harmony, recognizing one another, supporting one another, and that the financial aspect of our physical world is part of that support and flow. Just ask the Creator, bring that in, show you who you are with it, that you know what to do with it and how to live your life with it every day. Oh, and that's feeling complete.
That does feel complete. That was lovely. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So we're going to close the energy of that portion and ask Creator to do an alignment within you, aligning your molecules and chakras, show you who you are, do a healing and repair of your auric field, and filling you up with the energy of the all that is, and also your own soul's energy. You feel that soul energy filling you up from the heart space out, just filling your body completely. And then it's right there with Creator's unconditional love that both come together. With that, we say, thank you, Creator. It is done, it is done, it is done. And so it is.
And so it is. Oh, thank you. That's lovely. This is what our conversations are normally like them. There's a lot of talking and a lot of energy.
Yeah.
Ah,
Ooh, and a lot of yawns. So,
That's
with
right.
this work, there's a lot of yawning, a lot of deep breaths.
Yeah, so it's a way to kind of help move and release energy. So thank you, Katie. That was so lovely. And I want you to let people know how they can connect with you before we sign off.
Okay. Really, the best way to get in touch with me is through my website, which is www.awakentheinnerlight.com. And there's a little pop-up, and you can either book a free 30-minute consultation or a session, or just send me a message. Any of those will work. It's all through the online calendar. That really is the best way to get in touch with me.
All right. And if you forget that, you can always look at conversationsfromtheedge.net. That's NET, as a never-ending trip, which is what this amazing and wonderful life is. So anything we talk about, whoever we talk to will be on there somewhere. So if you're looking and you can't remember how to reach somebody, just look out there. All right. Well, thank you so much, Katie. We will be talking again sometime very soon, I'm sure. And this was just a lovely movement of energy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here, really.
This is your host, Kristine Madera. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation from the edge of consciousness. You can find all our conversations at conversationsfromtheedge.net. You'll also find links to schedule a private conversation with me or any of my friends, as well as tools to help you expand your own consciousness and explore what's possible for you outside the boundaries of your current perceptions. Feel free to use this podcast to start your own conversation by sharing it with friends, on social media, in your blog, or even in your own podcast. And as always, live the adventure of pushing your own edge. It's the most amazing adventure there is.